space. He has written for Cointelegraph and the Dash Times. He has a long professional history in politics as well, working for the Cato Institute and in the White House under George W. Bush. And Darren Tapp is a mathematician, a Dash researcher. He is a Big Fish Learning Center volunteer and a co-host of Neo Cash Radio. And these guys are going to take it away from here.
All right, so I'd like to introduce this guy here. This is Ian Marshall, the Dash Drive developer for Dash Evolution. So we have a couple cool people here.
I was like a long way down the list.
So first off, raise your hand if you've never used cryptocurrency before. This is yeah. Who has a Dash wallet? Someone raise their hand.
Woo! I do now.
Cool.
Today.
Nick in the back, I know you. Can I send you some Dash?
Sure.
Like right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
No, it's free. What's your address?
That's something.
Like something? I don't think you can go on that.
Is it in your history?
Probably not. That is not under his name. Did we see what happened just there? How can I send him some money if I don't know his horrifically long cryptographic address, which might generally make every time?
Hey Nick, so could you tell us that base 58 number that we need to know?
Yeah, exactly. So cryptocurrency is cutting edge technology right now, probably leading edge even, and as such, it isn't quite usable readily by the average person. This is not the average person here, right? The average person is like, oh hey, can you send me some? Oh yeah, where do I send it? Well, we have a phone together, and scan the QR code, that can work, or copy and paste the big lot of things. Is this you with on the walk? How do I have this address history, all these transactions, all these long hashes? Who are these people? I forget. I didn't write down who these people are. Oh, what if it's a different address each time for privacy reasons, as is the case with cryptocurrency now? What does it all mean? How do we solve this? Or more importantly, who's even trying to solve this? We're trying to solve this. Dash is trying to solve this. So it's been upcoming for quite a few years. Dash Evolution is a code name for a new Dash platform that would basically solve these kinds of user-friendliness issues, among many, many other things. I don't want to disrespect the hard work of these guys by just saying that's all it is, right? But do it at a protocol level. Do it in a way that you don't have to trust a single service or a single company or a single collection of nodes or whatever they're going to do this. So one of the cool things that Dash Evolution is going to do, the first problem to solve is instead of a username, instead of a long cryptographic public key, we will have a username that will be front-facing, right? So, I don't know, NH port 595 or something. It all has to be like, what if that was Nick's address? What if that was Nick's username? That would be Boil Beer or something like that. I'd be like, hey, send it to Boil Beer. Okay, I sent it. And then what if I send it again to Boil Beer? But on the blockchain, it's two different public keys, two different addresses. But to our user experience level, that's the same sitting with the same person. It is the same person, but on blockchain, it's still all the way it is before. So that's the main idea behind Dash Evolution. Do you want to give some extra details there?
Yeah, so I joined the Dash team, and you may know that Dash has a functionality to support projects with money, basically new money that's created. Some of it goes to mine, some of it goes to people who run nodes, and some of it goes to projects. And so Joël and some of his buddies got together and made a project for Dash Force News, and that's funded with the Dash blockchain. And I approached the Dash core group and said, hey, I know a lot of math, you need a guy that knows math, and they said, okay. And so I basically employed, or I built a Dash core group. So we're two different projects that are funded by the same cryptographic protocol. And to what Joël was saying, one reason I wanted to work at Dash and other places is because it does seem like the user experience is one of the main hurdles for adoption. If you could just easily use it, I mean, I guess the second hurdle would be volatility. But if people actually are using it on a daily basis to buy goods and services, you might see goods and services priced in terms of Dash, which would help the volatility fairly extremely. And then once that's solved, then it becomes an actual viable currency as we normally think of a government currency. So I think that this problem of the usability of it will lead to mass adoption more than the fanciest crypto out there. Although I am charged to look at the fancy crypto and all of that stuff, but let's keep it subdued and let's work on the user experience. So the things behind the scenes have to work, but as from the user experience, you don't need to know what's happening behind the scenes.
So as far as the username, how does that tie into the back end, the actual cryptography of cryptocurrency? Yeah, how does the username get extrapolated from that in a decentralized kind of way? So it's not like a centralized service that just says, oh, this is your account, and they control all that data.
So there would be an entry on the chain that would basically tie an account to public keys. One difficult question is to put public keys on the chain, but have payments go to different addresses, and so that's actually a solved question. So that'll be implemented in evolution. But basically, if you say, I want to pay oil beer, keep using your nick, is that okay?
That's fine.
If we keep wanting to pay, if I wanted to pay Boyle's beer, then if I could just type that in, then there would be a query on the chain, the appropriate address would be determined, and the payment would be made, and that's it, done. And then there might be, we're working on the ability for Nick to see that there was a payment from me if we were connected already as being friends, basically. He could see that the payment was from me, and then so that would make his accounting a lot easier and things like that.
Yeah, now, a lot of this extra, one of the big challenges behind this sort of thing, the reason it hasn't happened before, right, is how do you store all this data? It's pretty, so for example, there's a wallet out there called Edge. I think it's Edge in terms of the beta. It used to be called Airbits, who created that, and has a similar kind of username and password type structure, but it's still one provider that has to do all. They store all that data, and behind a double hash and all kinds of stuff like that. But still, that's not aiming to do that at all. So in order to store all this extra data in a distributed fashion, we use something called Dash Drive. And the thing I've got right here, there's a little thing or two about the Dash Drive. Do you want to do the basic rundown of what is the Dash Drive?
So Dash Drive comes out of one of the dips. There's one of these, and this, we also have the dApps as well. So we have dips and dApps, which the dApps are actually very exciting. Distributed application platform, basically. Building applications, users who use Dash can actually build an application themselves and store it in Dash Drive. And Dash Drive is basically a very small piece of that puzzle where we store the data on disk and index it so that we can provide it quickly to users. Some of you are probably developers out there, you probably are like, it's fairly easy to do that. But doing it in a distributed way is not actually that easy. So, kudos to the development team. I suppose I'm on that, so. We're storing it securely, but we have conflicting design needs. We're developing a system that's projecting information out, but we're also wanting to keep that secure because, like Joel's saying, we want the users to be able to see those usernames, go out there and find vendors and find friends to add to their list. so that we can keep it straight. But with dApps, we have the ability to say build PayPal on Dash. That's basically where we're going.
And so how does what exactly is the Dash? You mentioned it's like a storage, a way of storing things, but how is it stored? Is it related to like a centralized server? Is it not a centralized server? Is it something about IPFS?
Right, so funny enough, these things are still in design. I think they're still in dips. I'm not sure if we've got to the dApps yet. But, so currently the design track that we're on is being working with a thing called IPFS, which stands for Interplanetary File System. If that's not big enough. So it's really, IPFS is a full stack P2P application development environment that's a replacement for the whole web, basically. And we're storing and distributing the data over there. But we're also keeping our mind open with the idea of using a number of different backends, possibly in the future, allowing the masternodes to choose the way they want to store it. But we're going to be indexing and providing that data to the masternodes and the users.
Yeah, so a little thing about who here has never heard of a masternode, really? A masternode. There's a few. It's a very very educated group still, but the way Dash's structure works is there's a series of incentivized nodes. Like something like Bitcoin just has miners. Dash has miners as well as masternodes that are collateralized nodes that perform a bunch of special functions. So part of having this second layer to the network, you do a whole bunch of cool stuff, like for example that. And one of the groundbreaking idea behind this distributed storage system is you'll be able to do a lot of things that centralized companies and services do right now, but you'll be able to do that without trusting a third party, right? So who here, I'm assuming plenty of you have banking apps and stuff. They have the username and password and the recovery options, right? And who here has ever recovered their cryptocurrency wallet? Like how you used to, there's a few. We use a recovery seed, and like for example, you get your phone, you lose your phone, it's gone. Sorry, your money's gone. Because the private keys are local, stored on that device. So if you have it, you just, I forgot the password, I lost it, it's gone. Now, if you wrote the backup seeds down, you could go and restore that, or if you downloaded a backup, there's a few different ways. But you don't do that with your bank account, do you? If you lose the password, right? Or your email account. You do some password recovery option, and
or you go in person into the bank.
Yeah, of course. Well, there's that too, right? Yeah, well, now, one of the things, imagine being able to do that without trusting a centralized service. Imagine being able to have a username and password and just to log into your wallet and, I lost my phone, whatever. You can still log in securely. You don't have to trust a centralized service to do that. And I haven't checked in too close to details lately, but I have heard mention of being able to recover passwords at a protocol level as well. So that's kind of an exciting thing.
There's very difficult questions about how to do that securely, because the easier it is for you to recover your funds, the easier it is for somebody to hack it. So that is kind of where Dash is aiming for, but if we have to, because of security concerns, we're going to go over security. We're going to go first for security over ease of use in this case.
Yeah, that's one thing I've talked to plenty of people who run a wallet service, for example, and a lot of these kind of questions, it's not like Dash is the only group of people that ever thought to make things user-friendly for cryptocurrency. There's plenty of those out there. There's plenty of companies, for example, like Coinbase, that makes things relatively easy for a new person to use, which is why Coinbase was #1 in the App Store during that great crypto surge of December, for exactly those reasons. it's not that no one's tried it, it's that, you know, we keep on hearing, oh, we have a few different ways and we're looking at this and we're trying this, but we might this, and it's a difficult problem. That's because this is the holy grail of crypto. This is how do you have cryptographically secure, decentralized, sound money that you can still use as easily as trusting a bank or institution or something like that. And that's why, I mean, it's not like no one's ever thought about trying to solve this problem. A lot of people, some people even think it's impossible, but it's definitely a difficult problem to solve. And the difference with Dash is it has the resources and the focus to prioritize this, right? To prioritize making this useful for everyone while still being free. Well, being free is unrestricted, while still being censorship resistant. And so that's the main underpinning and idea of Dash Evolution is we will all be able to use what is like really jury-rigged kind of experimental feeling tech with a very polished user-facing feel to it. And basically you have your cake and eat it too, right? And so one of the things that cryptocurrency has the potential to free the world, I think, right? Free the money, free the world. It can really help pull out a great deal. One of the big barriers behind that has been how difficult it is to use on a wide scale. Right? How do you document business? What happens when you build a business model around a certain fee structure, and then a few years later, all of a sudden your business doesn't work anymore because the fees went way up, paying a few cents for $30. And of course, sort of the Bitcoin there, I believe the Bitcoin fees are on average under $5 at the moment. But you go from like a few cents to then all the way up to 30 in December. Now it's like that kind of fluctuation. Anyone who's ever run a business here knows that you can't plan your life around that, right? And so that's one of the reasons why part of Dash's long-term vision is to address scaling in a very comprehensive way ahead of when it's a problem, right?
That's one thing that I was very excited about to join the Dash team. I bought Bitcoin for less than $1 in 2011, and I saw that it was happening that way. And I remember I paid seven whole Bitcoins for a T-shirt early on. People think that's so crazy, but really what I learned in that experience was worth more than 7 full Bitcoin, because that gave me that whole idea. This is how it works. You send money, you get things in the mail. What else do you want money to do other than go to the store and get things as well? But so that's where my background. And so when I saw that it was very easy to see early on, like in 2013, 2014, that if something didn't happen, that Bitcoin would have had these fees skyrocket. And the Dash team, they were saying they were committed to low fees, but they were always delaying raising the block size, the one surefire way to make sure the fees stayed low. And so when I joined the team, I basically wrote a paper arguing for larger block sizes, and then they brought me on and actually wrote DIP 1, which is Dash Improvement Proposal 01. That's the public one. I think there's only one public one right now, and so you can read that. The Dash team really helped me with that. There's lots of review with that. It wasn't just my work, but so we wrote that, and we have successfully doubled the capacity of Dash, and it was already 4 times that of Bitcoin. So I think that shows that Dash is committed to making sure this user experience that Bitcoin had doesn't happen, and also and to add to what Joel was saying, even if Bitcoin fixes it in the future, you don't really trust something where this happened in the past, right? Because Bitcoin was headed towards these hiccups, people went other directions on one of them. And if Bitcoin just did the right thing and people could trust it, use it all the time, then you wouldn't see the market as diversified as it is now. However, that's how markets work, that's how freedom works, and it's a beautiful thing to watch unfold.
Yeah, of course. And so presently Dash has, roughly speaking, 8 times the transaction capacity as Bitcoin, and nowhere near the amount of transactions right now. And so this is fixing it. And this capacity, as Eric just said, got fixed late last year, around November. So
We'll get doubled, so it really wasn't a problem, but I use the analogy of a power plant, right? If you have a power plant, it might be able to produce a megawatt or 1,000 kilowatts, but anyway, like a million, right? But at any given time, it might be producing only 100 kilowatts instead of 1,000. And but you still want that excess capacity, because if everybody turns on their air conditioners, everybody gets their well pumps going, everybody gets this, there, that, then you either have the choice as a power company to have that capacity available, or have brownouts. And that's pretty much what Bitcoin has done. They've had brownouts. You can't use it, or you can use it, but you have to pay the same fee. And theoretically, it goes, there's no limit on what the fee is. So I've been making that analogy to the Dash team, and before I came on, they already agreed with that. And I never want to see a situation where Dash has brownouts.
of course, and that's one of the things that having that massive capacity really helps ahead of time. And it's not just Bitcoin. I mean, Ethereum's ran through all before because of too many people running their crypto kitties, and cats have taken down the Ethereum network before. Virtual cats, $100,000 virtual cats. And when you run into these kinds of bottlenecks, you have to have a plan for that. And I remember back in December when Coinbase again was full of users, the top app in the App Store. Litecoin started to have some scaling issues very temporarily, and Litecoin has 4 times the capacity of Bitcoin. But I remember Litecoin was always with these sub-cent fees. Always, well, Litecoin and Dash are kind of the same with that. But I remember Litecoin got to, I forget what the average fee of it was, a couple dollars. The median fee, and also I looked on the fee charts, like how many, the vast majority of fees were well over $1 for Litecoin for a great period of time. So what we don't realize is right now the usage of cryptocurrency is extremely limited, and any real volume would just crash any coin right now.
So, and I remember that period that Joel was talking about where the Litecoin fees went way up, and it wasn't just the fees went up. Some transactions were getting dropped. And, as somebody who wants to, know everything, so I can tell them Dash everything, basically. I was like, well, why did this happen? So I totally looked, and I'm like, oh, it wasn't the problem that the Bitcoin network was having. We can definitely rule that out. And I was like, well, what's the problem? And so I started looking at statistics of, the Bitcoin network, the Litecoin network, the Dash network, all these, and comparing them. And one thing I noticed is that there were very few peering nodes on the Litecoin network. And so Dash addresses this. So I can't conclude for sure that that's the reason that these fees went up and the payments got dropped.
Maybe some correlation, you got causation.
But you need a certain, it would generally you would need a certain number of nodes just to be robust and make sure everything has the connections. Those 200 some period nodes don't count the ones that you run at home that are sucking up connections. And that's really what they do. They just use them. They don't give you any back. And so that's what I think caused this. Dash addresses that by having the master nodes. There's an economic incentive for at least what is today 4,500 nodes to be online at any time. And these are nodes that are on VPSs, that are on good computers, because it's not just number of nodes, it's quality of nodes as well. And those master nodes were very well prepared for a situation where it could actually cost $10,000 a year to run a master node. And we think that's fine, and they'll be compensated accordingly.
Yeah. So, for example, master node right now makes in excess of $4,000 a month.
Yeah, every time you do this calculation, Joel, I read it when you do it, I'm like, is that right? And I'm like,
yeah. And so the number I'm going off on that is on masternode.me, which is
okay.
a Camus service that he's one of the Dash developers who runs.
Move?
Yeah.
Does he do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a few different.
He's a developer that goes by that name.
Yeah.
He's on.
That's the main issue to pull from that. But basically, if you're making $4,000 a month and that paying 10 grand a year off of that, it's not that bad. Of course, it would be much more at that point. But that's the point is, what happens if you let Litecoin down and it goes down for a second?
Can I tell you a story about Move?
Absolutely, I love Move.
So we do some of our collaboration in Google Docs or documents, and like remotely. The teams all over the world on the core team, and your team too, Dash Force, you got represented, right? And so we'll just collaborate on these documents. And so I wrote up one, and I was like, it would take 10 quadrillion years, or maybe it was quintillion years, before somebody could run their computer to crack it. And I thought that was okay. And like just to crack one thing, not to crack the whole thing, right? 10 quadrillion years, okay, we're good, Like in your investment, it just 10 quadrillion years to crack your investment. It actually takes longer than that. You're going to have it moved by the time somebody did that. Anyway, and so Moo actually responded, can we make that more? Something like that. So
Just up a little bit.
but yeah.
Yeah, but the point is, if you have a node on like a Bitcoin or Litecoin or something like that, it goes down, you get it back up, it gets now service back, DDoS goes down. You don't care too much, but with a master node, you're in a payment queue. And so if your node goes offline for a certain amount of time, you get bumped to the back of the queue and you lose money. So you're going to be incentivized having a node that does not go down.
Can we take a question?
Yes, absolutely. There's that microphone, we can also
Yes.
walk around a bit or something.
Yes, we sure
Use
can.
the microphone for the video.
There it is.
Yeah, by the way, we're sure a lot of this, since evolution is very user-friendly based, we want to have a lot of input here and a lot of questions and concerns, and just make more of a discussion and less of a lecture. Very lecture this morning. Go ahead.
Cool. So I work in Portsmouth, and I've seen the effectiveness in Dash and how businesses are accepting it for day-to-day transactions because of the low transaction fees and the high confirmation rates. My one concern is that I recently found out that about just under 60% of current Dash up there is actually tied up in masternodes. Do you guys worry that that will kind of stunt the possible growth that Dash could have long term?
There are economic reasons to believe that this won't happen. Basically, the masternodes form a big long list, and as one gets paid, it drops to the bottom, and then they start moving up the list to get paid. And at the top, there's some probabilistic things, so you don't really know who's going to be paid right away. So that way you can't hack that, the payment queue. But anyway, so now the economic concerns say, the Dash price shoots up, it did shoot up to 1,000, but now it's back. Yeah, so let's say it shoots up to 10,000 like Bitcoin did. And I'm not saying this will happen, I'm just saying theoretically. And the Dash masternode owners that now, I have all this money, I want actual money, might sell, right? Now, if they sell their masternodes, then then this list becomes shorter. And there's it's a shorter period of time before your next payment. So as there's fewer and fewer masternodes, a masternode owner has more value by having a masternode, and then as there's more and more, then a masternode owner has less value, so that the masternodes might sell because they're getting paid too infrequently, which is not really a concern for anybody that wants a nice salary. But so I believe the economic incentives will keep us well over 4,000 nodes in perpetuity, really.
If I might just say something.
If there's another.
Yeah, the fact that masternodes are kind of expensive to have is a really good thing because one of the problems of a network like this is people can try and set up basic masternodes for man-in-the-middle attack and a number of different types of attacks, and so masternode collateralization forms a defense against what's known as the Sybil attack, which is generating a whole bunch of fake accounts or whatever. You can't do that when it's collateralized, and you need that collateral to prevent that type of attack.
And in the future, Dash is also prepared to have at a protocol level what are called shared master nodes. So somebody that doesn't have the whole 1,000 Dash wouldn't need the whole 1,000 to do this. You could basically say, here's my 20 Dash. I would like you to form a master node with it, and somebody else would do that. And so this will help address that question too, because it could be a lot of small people putting a small stake. But however, this is way down the line in the roadmap. I think in 2019, 2020 maybe. But it's awesome, and I've looked at it, and like, you know, people say these things, and I don't think it's possible. And then I looked at their documentation, and I thought about their documentation. I started to write up, and yes, you can do it. Here's how. And it, to me, it's awesome because I actually know what's possible. I mean, before I was employed there, I was like, that sounds kind of pie in the sky. But I believe that's something that we can do. It's not easy, and we'll take a while.
Yeah, so one thing about the concept of being tied up in master, everyone's aware of the concept of hodling, right? Or just holding cryptocurrency long term. Yeah, just holding it, not selling. That's all that master nodes are, right? Is you don't actually lock up your funds, you just have some and you don't move them, just prove you have them. And so, for example, I have like half a Dash in my phone right now that I'm locking up, not moving it and just locking it up, right? Now the difference is with something like Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency, a lot of times people try to make more Bitcoin than they had before by trading it on exchanges. They put it on an exchange, they sell it when it's high, and then buy back when it's low, and all that kind of stuff, which could be a security risk if you have a lot of funds in the network tied up in exchanges, which can be honeypots you can attack. And so Dash, in a certain way, was one of the economic benefits of masters is they're kind of incentivized to keep their funds secure rather than do that.
In general use, when you have it to buy and sell things, keeps it off the exchanges. Do you think we have time for a few more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, comment.
Should I?
I'll bring it to
I have a technical background, computer systems, and even though my skills are somewhat dated, I do understand certain concepts that you're presenting here. But I also run a very ordinary landscaping business. Perhaps the panel members can comment on starting from the end user, where, because it says talking about cryptocurrency going mainstream, maybe the panel could start at the end user level and say, okay, Rich Khan here, he's got a landscaping business. All right, well, these are the concerns, and then work your way back from there down to the master and subservient nodes and get into the technical guts of it and talk about what needs to be overcome to get to that level, but starting at the high level, please.
Well, I have a unique perspective as the least intelligent person up here, so I can kind of give my own experience as a user of cryptocurrency who's not technical at all, who's actually, I closed my bank account a couple of years ago and lived only on Bitcoin and then now only on the Dash. And so obviously I've done it as an experiment and bumped into a lot of these problems. So first off, that ease of use thing, just because I know how to use it doesn't mean other people know how to use it. And so one of the things that between Albert and I, we've set up 18 people over the weekend with new Dash wallets. That's a lot of new people to get, like a lot of also non-technical, so very technical. A lot of different people that have had that user experience. In general, it's been pretty good, but there's always a little bit of like, you have to explain this. No, see that backup, see, just forget that, wait until the handwrite down at home, don't type it in, and someone's gonna take a screenshot on their phone and they're basically the private key. It's like, yeah, it's like there's a few problems with that if you just say, here, sign up for an account, put in your username, get a password, and now you get funds. And then also the very problem of like, oh, how do I send you some? I've had some issues with trying to get funds off of my Dashboard wallet that I have on my computer to my mobile device here, because it doesn't scan QR codes, and like how do I copy and paste from there to here? I still haven't quite figured out a smooth way of doing that. Maybe I think I'm a moron, but the point is, you shouldn't be able to have morons using your system. And so, how do you send it to another person? That's like the biggest thing.
So we talked a bit about Dash improving the consumer experience, so we think that will also, the customer experience, it's not called consumer. Because I think a lot of people consume and produce. But and the merchant usability. So what we're working towards is the ability, like say you have a repeat customer, right? And even if you have a customer, like Joel's a new customer, you send him an invitation to connect, he connects, and then you can actually, what we're hoping for is that you just send an invoice over the network that he can just pay later.
That's the goal, but it's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I pay my co-working space fee dues in Dash. And so the guy who handles that just over a secure messenger, because he just sends me an address every month. Hey, here you go.
And that's at the current level, so we're working towards
Yeah.
the invoice. And once there's a connection established, then you just invoice, and then they can pay you whatever, and then you just go through and you look at so-and-so
Yeah.
paid, so-and-so paid, and you can keep your books that way.
And
Excuse me, as of right now, I'm setting up my wallet. So like, let's say where my landscape customers, or whatever. As of right now, you would have to say, okay, I'm gonna send you X dollars in Dash.
yeah, so where you have to say, yeah, where you'd have to say,
Scan a picture.
yeah, or you have
You
to
send an
say,
email, you do these things.
you have to say, hey, you're good with it, and here's the address. You can reuse the same old address, but that's not very private, because then anyone who looks up that address on the blockchain knows exactly how much money you have. That's why they generate new addresses every time, which means you have to give me the new address every time. That can be a little pain in the butt. And I know some people who have also done recurring payments. I believe Coinbase does that, don't they? And so Coinbase is a company, right? And they do recurring cryptocurrency payments, but you have to trust your fund to the company. Now, with Dash Evolution, you should be able to do recurring payments from the wallet just normally. You should be able to set that up. And so the recurring bill, yes. Another thing is joint accounts. For example, what happens when I buy some of that lovely barber maple syrup that they have there in the hall, or some of the Herschel soaps, and it's like, hey, like, honey, who has the Dash wallet? Can I borrow your phone? All that kind of stuff. Well, what happens when you have your Revolution account? You have a joint account with a partner or a business partner. Like if you're a business, you got the expense account pretty much. You can have a joint account through a multi-signature address. And so this is a bunch of cool stuff that's going to be, that we're already using in our financial systems today, but now will be possible to do with cryptocurrency without, again, signing up for a big company like Coinbase.
You've got a lot of questions. Just tell me where to go, and I'll bring them the microphone.
Right here, right.
So I think Darren really astutely said that fluctuations in price is a huge problem, and I'm curious if on the roadmap, whether through protocol solutions or business-oriented solutions, how is fluctuations in price being addressed?
I had the privilege of attending the Dash forum in London, and that was asked to Ryan on stage, and I kind of had my thoughts on it at the same time. Ryan said the same thing that I did, that we really won't be able to address the volatility thing until, and Ryan came up with exactly the same number. He's not technical, so I thought that was interesting, but like I wouldn't suggest the volatility is addressed until there's at least $1 trillion market cap. But around there, you should see it start to go down. And the volatility is more of a problem for, general use in the market, right? If you're a business and you're worried about your cash flow, you can't have just, something that I have no control over change that, sometimes it works out in your favor and that's great, but you're not in the business of taking risks with money. So I don't believe that can be fixed without kind of a central agency. So there really is no plan to fix it, but I do agree, once the market cap of one of these things gets up to $1 trillion, then we can talk. Then we can talk about, okay, let's start setting our prices in Dash, let's start doing that, this, and that. Okay, it also depends on use. if there's a steady state solution where most people use it in the $1 trillion market cap, then the price will stay there. But if people use it, the price stays, will keep going up. And now you can never count on that, but if the price kept going up, then it still would be in businesses' interest to use it. So if it was like a deflation, price deflation, businesses would be better off accepting Dash than accepting Federal Reserve notes today. So I think that, you know, what we should hope for is either a steady price solution or a gradually rising price solution. Both of those are acceptable.
Now, something about use, right? Right now, the value of cryptocurrency is really what the value will be tomorrow, right? It's very speculative for the most part. Now, once you need Dash to do something, you need it to pay your bills, you have a value in buying it at a current price, even if you don't expect it to go up or down. Which means, when a lot of people are using this as money, it'll be a lot more stable. Now, of course, how do you get from here to there? Obviously, more expand, more use, more businesses and people to end users taking risks possibly, but Dash has partnered with a payment processor called Alt36 that will be very user-friendly, right? It'll be very user-friendly and will convert Dash to fiat currency in their bank account up to every 7 minutes for high volatility days. So then a business accepting Dash will not have to do with any of those volatility risks in the interim if they're using an Alt36 enabled business, of which there will hopefully be thousands by the end of the year.
So yeah, Alt36 is a payment processor that some of my coworkers on the ASU team are also involved in. So we take a question from Len. Go ahead. Okay.
Where do you recommend going to review what you've covered and, you know, be able to really absorb it slowly and, you know?
I love that question. I love that question. Yes, that is the right question, and anybody out there should always ask that question. I think that saved me so much money because you know, where do you go to review this? So I'm up here and saying what I'm saying. Joel's up here saying, you know, he's saying where do you go to review it? One place I started was the Bitcoin Wiki, and it still is a pretty good place of, you know, almost like giving an anthology of everything that the original Bitcoin protocol involved. I am a little hesitant to direct you there, but I still think it's a good enough source to direct you there. But the Bitcoin project has become somewhat kind of skewed. It used to be more academic, and now it's kind of a weird type of thing, in my opinion.
Darren, if you read the Dash docs on GitHub.io, remember that?
Yeah.
Portal is that a good place to send people?
There's that. I mean, we have DIP 1. The DIP 1 is based on some of the BIPs, the Bitcoin Improvement Plan, and so like you can look at what they're doing. A lot of this is technical. Yeah.
So there's a few plain English things. For example, I believe on Dash.org, the Dash website, there's something that says something about what about Dash.org/evolution. Now, there's not too much information on that because evolution doesn't fully exist yet, right? It's still being developed, and it seems to be the Dash way, the Dash cultural way to under-promise and over-deliver, not overhype stuff before it exists. So there will be a lot more info when this is released this year.
Joel, let me rephrase.
Yeah, so, I will as soon as it's out.
So yeah, where would you direct somebody to learn about Dash as it works today?
That's kind of an interim question because as of this week, probably Dash.org. I'm working on a site, discoverdash.com, which is going to be really cool, but we're in the middle of changing the theme and stuff like that. But in a few weeks or a month, that discoverdash.com will be the place to be there. We will have one clear answer to that question, which we do not quite have right at this exact moment.
I mean, this thing drove me nuts with the price going up and everything. And I don't have a coding background, and Joel's suggesting Dash.org, but you could, as a critical thinker, say, well, they have a vested interest, and you would be right. And so one thing that I did with Bitcoin, I don't know if I would recommend this, but I went to the GitHub site where the actual code is, and look at what they're doing, what they're saying about it, how they're setting it up. And I'm not a coder, but I would actually try to read and see where it does, like it says it does this, doesn't do that. And but that's a situation where it can't lie, but it's very technical. You can't, I mean, that's the program you're running, but it's very technical. So I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Sometimes if you know someone who's
You guys have
technical.
done a good job.
Well, thanks.
Oh, and even if you're not a coder, they have discussions on GitHub. So you can see, like, somebody says, blah, 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 and this whole, when Bitcoin had a wreck, this is the way I kind of look at it. That's where I, just seeing what people said about the code, what gave me enough knowledge to say, hey, that's a problem. Yeah.
So what YouTube channel called Crypto Report?
Well, I have a new crypto. Okay, everybody do your YouTube channel. So mine, which is shared, is Neocash Media. You can go on Neocash Media, YouTube something, and it won't be about Dash all the time. It'll be about whatever we want to talk about. Like last episode, we talked about the Fed chair change, which is monetary related. Joel?
Yeah, so learning videos are really great. There's the official Dash YouTube channel, has a bunch of cool stuff. Specifically, if you look up Dash School, Amanda B. Johnson, who used to live here, she did a great thing called Dash School, which goes into the very beginnings of like super user-friendly with like a whiteboard about how does a blockchain work and all this kind of like the underpinnings of cryptocurrency. Then what makes Dash different, again, they're very, like you're teaching like an elementary school class. And then I believe she touches on Dash evolution there a little bit, but.
So she had one endeavor which was called, what was it? The crypto something.
Yeah, they decrypted
Yeah,
and
they
all
decrypt. And then she was learning about cryptocurrency. She's like Dash, and then so she did Dash Detail, which is more of a Dash focused thing.
Yes, and all this kind of stuff is going to come out more as this becomes a more public thing that's in existence. And of course, we're doing our best with Discover Dash to make sure there's one spot where the new person can go in case we learn everything a new person should. Like answer the 90%, and there's going to be the 10% that want to go, oh, I want to read the documentation. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, how about that? And those people, can a lot of times do their own research, but have a look on the site for that. But so we're working on making the site tip-top and listing all the merchants around the world who take Dash, which soon might be a waste of time because it might be everywhere. But in the meantime, yeah, look forward to that.
Oh, and there's I'm working with the ASU team to make a course on blockchain, which is like the main technology. It's doing it. It will be technical again, but like the first few units might be accessible.
Yeah, there's going to be undergrad and graduate programs.
So that's we're targeting that'll be released in August, and it'll be on Coursera. And you can take it for free. You can pay for a certificate from ASU, or if you're enrolled at ASU, take it for towards a degree.
Yeah, and there will be, as far as I've heard, there will be scholarships as well available as part of the funding deal that Dash did. Yeah, so Arizona State University seems like one of the ground zero for cool blockchains.
Not long after I came on, they're like, hey, do you want to talk to these ASU guys? And they brought them on, and it's been a great thing, because I'm like, I don't know the answer. And like, what do you guys think? And like, oh, well, let's read this paper, let's do that, let's do this. Let's run some simulations. We're doing amazing things. We should have a paper coming up pretty soon, but that'll be technical too. But,
Yeah, also the blockchain research lab. It's interesting because a great deal of blockchain research out there has been done on Bitcoin. Very little on the other projects out there, but Dash is putting in a lot of effort in having research into the complexities and future of this whole system. And Dash's founder, Evan Duffield, he left the core team to start Dash Labs, which is a forward-thinking research program to solve these kind of problems that we might not have for like 10 years or more. For example, open source hardware specialized for masternodes, and when masternodes have to process something like 4,000 transactions a second rather than like 8,000 a day, right? And there's a lot of exciting research coming up on the future, and that's the cool thing to sort of wrap up the main thought of we're not trying to anticipate, so we're not trying to run into problems and fix them. We're trying to anticipate and be prepared for as many as we can. Of course, you can't do everything, but
And have them fixed before they're done.
yes,
But
if further in advance you can have fix for these issues, including no one knows how to use these long cryptographic hashes and stuff like that, the sooner you fix that, the sooner you start planning for that, the better.
Thank you.
Shirt. Small, medium, and large. Albert has a bunch left. Go get a shirt. We're out of XL, sorry. But everyone else, free shirt.